This is Power 98.7. And now you're listening to Power Talk with Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. 9 a.m. to midday. Taking your calls on 0861 987 000.
Sanbonani bantwana benkosi, brand new week indeed, and today we're going to start the show in a rather different way. We want to apologize with immediate effect. We'll start taking your calls after this interview. We've got the Democratic Alliance Federal Chairperson Helen Zille, and on that question of the mayoral position of the city of Johannesburg. We'll take your calls immediately after, and maybe you can also say your thoughts on what you think about what she's going to say. This is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, on Power 987, and good morning to all of you. Without any further ado, Helen, welcome to Power Talk, and thanks deeply for creating time.
Mbuyiseni, it's great to be with you. I was waiting for you to call and interview me.
This is not the interview, Helen. We still have to do the proper interview, you and I, as agreed, because
Yes.
I think we need to dig into this magnanimous history you have built in South African politics.
Well, you and I love this country just as much. We came from different angles at it, but we want South Africa to work, and that is our passion, and that is our life commitment.
Absolutely. Let's start with the obvious question. You are 74 years old now, and the obvious question obviously is, doesn't the DA have enough resources for this ambition?
Firstly, I'm very young still, December, I always say. In my family, when you get to my age, you're kind of approaching your midlife crisis. There is no such thing as a woman who loses energy in my family. You know, my aunt was still running her business when she was 99, and her sister was 105. So, you know, you keep on going in this family, and you keep on doing the best you can to make your society a better place. So that's number one for the age thing. Mm-hmm. And the great thing about age is that it brings experience. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience builder. And I've had experience at every level of government now and in very many different circumstances. And currently now I oversee, I think is the right word, the DA's governance unit. And so I have insight into the problems of many municipalities, and it's very, very important that I learn all of those lessons. So age brings experience, and I think you would need to have every ounce of your historical experience to bring to bear on Johannesburg, because it is a very, very broken city, and I'm going to have to draw on the very deepest reserves if I decide to stand and if I am selected. There's going to be strong competition in the DA. In the DA, it works like this. You don't get deployed to become anything. You have there's a call for applications. So the applications are opened, and then anybody who thinks they can do the job can apply. There are certain criteria, and there's a screening committee that will screen you out if you don't meet those basic criteria. And if you get through the screening committee, there are about 4 more stages in the selection process until ultimately one of the persons is recommended to the federal executive from that process. And it's all grueling, difficult, and fair. There's an ombudsperson that monitors the whole thing to make sure that nobody is manipulating the outcome, and it is very fair. We don't do any deployment in the DA. So many young people, I hope, have applied and will apply. They must give me a lot of competition. And often when the young people apply, they win. I mean, look at Jordan Hill-Lewis. I think he was 34 when he became the mayor of Cape Town. You know, Chris Papas, I think, was 29 when he became the mayor of Umgeni and did wonderful things. But we don't look at the age. He went through the process. We called for nominations and applications for mayor of Umgeni. I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
And applied with many others. And he came out top in the process. That's how it works in the DA. So there might be many young people, and they might be much better than me in the process, and then they'll be chosen. And that's if I decide to put my hat in the ring at all.
What will make you decide? What is it that may make you take the decision to avail yourself for the mayoral candidacy of Joburg?
Well, let me tell you, the biggest thing for me, absolutely, are my grandchildren and my husband. My husband is getting old. He's quite a lot older than me, and he's very comfortable and happy.
So we are allowed to say he is old, except you.
No, I'm still young. But
he can't run the city of Joburg. That's what you're saying.
No. What I'm saying is he's very happy where he is now, and he doesn't want to move to Joburg. And so I would have to leave him, not obviously permanently. We've been married for 42 years, and we're very happy. But I would, have to live in Joburg, obviously, if I was the mayor. And I would fly back from time to time to see him, and I would phone him every day, obviously, or he would phone me. But my grandchildren are my biggest thing. When I was a mother and had 2 small children, I was very, very busy. And I didn't see them and their activities nearly as much as I would have liked. But now I've got more time to do that with my grandchildren, and I absolutely love it. And I would miss it hugely because they're both in Cape Town now too. But, you've got to say, what is the best thing you can do for your grandchildren? And it's a toss-up. I mean, one of the best things I can do for them is be there for them here physically. But maybe helping to make South Africa work is perhaps the biggest gift that I could bequeath to them. But that is, assuming a lot of things. It's assuming I stand, it's assuming I get in, and it's assuming we win the election and that we can actually do something with that outcome.
So the DA members that are lobbying you would quite have to make the case in relation to either your husband or your grandchildren, it seems.
No, the truth is that my husband and my sons have said it is my choice. They've always said that, and they've always supported me.
Okay.
So it's a decision I have to take, and I have to lobby myself in my head.
Well, I started with the question of your age, and you alluded to the massive experience you've had as a mayor and as the Premier of the Western Cape. I don't recall if you held any position at a national level, but what about...
MP, yes.
Come again?
I was an MP, yes.
Oh, yes, that. But what about your experience do you think the city of Johannesburg needs?
Well, I'm very good at analyzing what a problem is and getting to the root of that problem. In that sense, I'm very radical, and probably more radical than you. By radical, I mean going to the root of a situation and identifying the real cause of a problem, and then developing a strategy to deal with it and to get to an outcome that I want or that the voters have voted for. And that is the thing that I'm good at.
And this is the golden sort of signature from an experience point of view that the city of Joburg would benefit from your leadership.
Yes, I hope that is what they would benefit from. I think the other thing is that I've had a lot of experience with coalitions. And in Cape Town, we had that 7-party coalition. Remember, in 2006, yes. You were probably still at school.
No, Helen, I wasn't at school. This is a second provocation I'm trying very hard to avoid. Let me ask you let me put a radical situation to you.
Yeah.
The big problems of not just the metros in South Africa, and this I include Cape Town too, is landlessness. This is a big question. I mean, land from a human settlement point of view, Khayelitsha, Langa, that's apartheid special planning, the capacity to break that. In Cape Town, I can't say that has been successfully restructured. The property prices and the capacity of the working class or working people in general to live in the city is much more difficult than it was in the past. This is the case as well as in Johannesburg, despite, the services, and this people say is the reason you always have broken services is because of the problem of spatial planning. What would be your immediate idea to resolve spatial problems, for instance, of Alexander?
Well, you will find that many suburbs that used to be all white, both in Cape Town and Johannesburg, are now completely integrated, which is a good thing. And some are probably totally uniracial in the sense of being completely black, like, for example, the Greater Hillbrow and Yeoville area. And that is a form of disruption to the original apartheid spatial planning. But one critical thing that one would have to do as mayor of Joburg is to think of a viable strategy with others, because you'd have to work with others. There are many people working in that space to do inner city regeneration and to ensure that those literally thousands of dwelling units were habitable and decent for people. And that is what one would have to spend a lot of time on and a lot of energy on with others. There's no way that Joburg could do that alone. There are many NGOs and CBOs working in that space and doing some very good work. I've been reading up on what they've done. I've read up about IKAYA and a few other organizations who are doing really good work as far as I can tell from what I read. And then there are private developers who are absolutely essential to the mix. And we did one such project in Cape Town in a very well-located area. I live in Pinelands. And just opposite where we live, there's the big space that was owned by the province called the Old Conradie Hospital space. And in the Old Conradie Hospital space, we developed a pioneering project that I would hope to replicate. The government puts in the land. So we said, fine, here's the land, free, gratis, and for nothing. This is our contribution to this development. Then you ask the national government to put in the appropriate subsidies for social housing and the USDG grant, as you know. Mm. Then you say to developers, put in your bids. What we want is X number of social housing units, and there are 3,000 units coming on stream in this particular development. It's now nearly finished. And they can also cross-subsidize that by having, for example, a business center in there, and the businesses can often cross-subsidize the social housing units. Mm. And then there's some very upmarket units at the very top in the penthouses, et cetera, et cetera. And that is a fantastic model that has worked incredibly well in this area in Pinelands, just opposite where I live. It's very close to transport. It's well located in the city. It breaks apartheid spatial planning completely. And it makes social housing units affordable because of all the people who bring their skills and contribution into the bargain. We did it kind of on a whole of society basis, and that's the kind of thing that you want to look at for people who are employed and can pay something towards their housing, and then you make sure that you get a good social housing company to manage the results after that.
And this would be a sort of solution to the conditions of Alex?
Well, it's not one size fits all, definitely not. I mean, that was a solution where we had a very big piece of land that the province owned. I would have loved to have done that on Kulenborg too, on Wingsfield and Youngsfield, but that the national government owns, and they didn't want to let us have access to that. Now, this entire model depends on the state putting in their land for nothing. And when we wanted to do Wingsfield, which was a very well-located piece of land owned by the SANDF, we said, please let us get access to this land to do another Conradie model for social housing. And they said to us, you've got to pay us 1 billion rand. That was back in the day for that land. And we said, no, that makes the scheme totally unviable. If you've got to put in 1 billion rand, you can't develop social housing on it. So you have to have well-located land that the state is prepared to put in for nothing. and create a model with USDG subsidies and other things that the private sector can come in and develop a model for cross-subsidization from business and other things to make it viable to put affordable housing in. Now, obviously, in Alex, it's a totally different story. On the perimeter of Alex, there are quite nicely developed units. I've seen those, obviously, and I still drive through Alex quite a lot on the way back from the airport when I'm in Joburg. And, in the worst slum areas of Alex, there's a hell of a lot of work to be done. Now, there are different models that you can do to address that, but all of them will have to be done on a rollover model where you de-densify and you upgrade piece by piece. I don't know if you've seen the drive from Cape Town into town in Langa, that particular area, where they were all shacks once, and now 3/4 of it, or even more, I would say 7/8 of it, is built housing. But that was done on a rollover model where some people have to move out, you have to upgrade the living conditions and the structures, and then people move back. But that is a very difficult thing because the people who oppose it most of all are the people who don't qualify. So if people, for example, have benefited from a house before and they're renting their house so they can go and live in a shack, obviously those people will not be able to benefit from a second house from the state. That's obvious. You can't get two free state housing opportunities. But so there are all of these different models that you do in different circumstances. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all.
And then the second question obviously relates to the problem of aging infrastructure. I related it to overcrowding. I mean, this aging infrastructure is not quite the case when it comes to new developments, but you still have street lights that don't work, sewer that, is always broken, and so on and so forth. But Johannesburg, in its major areas, has dilapidated infrastructure in the main because it is old.
Not only because it is old, because it hasn't been maintained. That's the problem. It hasn't been maintained for the longest time. And Johannesburg has entities, 13 entities, which are responsible for different aspects of infrastructure, like Johannesburg Water, like Joburg Power, like all of those other entities that they have, the roads, and all of that, public transport, all of that. Now, entities per se can work very well, but they have to have ring-fenced funds, and they have to be really well run and managed. So, for example, all the money that is paid for electricity needs to go into a ring-fenced fund for Joburg Power. And Joburg Power needs to use that money to fix the electricity infrastructure. That's what has to happen. And in the past, one of the big problems with Joburg is that they haven't ring-fenced that money, and the employment numbers, personnel numbers that Joburg has employed has grown by 84% since 2010. So it's really become an employment agency rather than a utility maintenance and development institution. And they've taken the money from the sales of utility services to fund all sorts of other things except the utility services. And that's got to change. That's got to change. And you've got to ring fence the utility services budgets so they're used for that.
We don't have time, but you mentioned coalition. Who would be the natural partners towards such a mayoral? You already indicated, to your mayoral emergence, as it were. Let's say DA, even if it gets its ambitious targets, but it falls short. Who are the natural partners for a sustainable coalition? And why would you be the best place in the context of Johannesburg? The players here are the EFF, the ANC, and your Helen Mashaba.
Yes, well, it depends on the result of the election, obviously. Now, we know that the ANC is coming apart, especially in Gauteng. We know that they are facing a very big challenge from MK and the EFF. And while the ANC comes apart, I'm hoping that voters who've traditionally supported the opposition parties will consolidate their vote behind the DA, because then we can become the biggest party in Johannesburg, which would be absolutely critical to forming a stable coalition. So our voters need to consolidate and make us the biggest party, and then the possibility of coalitions depends on how the voters vote. It's up to the voters, really, if they want to rescue Joburg or not.
Of course, that's obvious, but I'm saying in an instance where the outcome is more or less what it is now, who are the natural partners for the DA, and in that management of a coalition, why would you be the best person to coordinate those people?
Well, if it is what it is now, we would go into opposition, because the ANC would take the mayoralty, and that's going to be just impossible to implement measures that fix Joburg, because the ANC broke Joburg. So if they've got the executive mayoralty, it's just impossible to implement the policies that will fix Joburg, I'm afraid. That's just the truth of the matter. So if the result was what it is now, we'd probably go into opposition. We have to be the biggest party in order to be able to implement the strategies that I've just spoken to you about that will fix Joburg. Mbuyiseni, I've got to chair a Federal Executive Committee meeting at 9:30.
It is 9:30.
And it is 9:30. That's why I've got to say, with all love and respect, goodbye to you.
Thank you.
I can't
Thank you
wait
for your time.
meeting.
Thank you for your time.
Call me another time. We'll carry on this very interesting
Well,
chat.
I'll come down to Cape Town. We can have it for 2 hours, amongst other things.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I'll take you to lunch.
Lovely.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Democratic Alliance Federal Chairperson Helen Zille, and being lobbied there to be the mayor. What do you think, Bantwana Benkosi? Nyamfuna umedem. It's 9:30. It's time for the headlines here on Power Talk with Nyakalo Tefu. Nyakalo, unyaka medem.